All right, hello and welcome. We're going to be live here with Lindsay from Tomb of Illumination, and we're going to be going over his model of how the sky works. So here we are. If I can hit the unmute button, here we go.
But yeah, thanks for being here. It's going to be kind of a free-form conversation. I know Shane has some particular questions for Lindsay, and then after we're done here, there's also going to be reading after this. We're going to be going through Galaev later on for anyone that's interested in that. But yeah, thanks for being here.
Ooh,
Great.
no worries.
Thanks everyone. Thanks Toby. Let's whoever's here who wants to put on camera, we should do that. That's cool. And let's see if Rockfin's going yet. I forgot my extra steps there. There we go. Thinking of Mrs. Tribune, man. That extra step is a bitch. All right, we're good. And we got intro running. So, I mean, we don't really have a format. We're just gonna do probably through topics, and we try to ask questions as we want to go. People can chime in pretty much whenever. I only have a few structured questions, but I got a lot of them. I have some of your images to share, just like as a general background. They're so dense and filled with stuff that we can probably use one for a really long time or before we need to change one. Plus, I already hand selected the ones that I want to talk about, so that should be easy. And let's see, share this way. Are you sharing your Discord? Or are you doing virtual cam? All right.
Yeah, I think I'm going to turn it off though. It doesn't look proportional on my streaming versus this as well. I should have had it activated on Discord first.
All right.
Just gonna turn it off.
I mean, I'll put the images in the chat too.
You see me?
Yep. Is that your mic or a light? You have a light?
Well, yeah, I thought it might help me at night, but then I didn't realise it just because I use the whiteboard, it just shows a circular glare and covers all my work.
I was like,
Good
that's
for
a
nothing.
nice off-white like floodlight you got there. How's that on your
Yeah.
white chalkboard? I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
So I see.
the money.
Toby's here. Let's see, how's this running? Shit, Lindsay's live. All right. Well, Lindsay can be live as well.
Oh, I just realized, Lindsay, you're rocking on the browser. Didn't even notice that.
Wait, how do I share media viewer? There we go.
For anyone that's tuning in, bear with us. We're just kind of getting things prepared here to start asking questions, I believe.
All right. I think my stream intro is over. And we have live chat, bringing Discord in, and then we're good to go.
Excellent.
Wait, I'm sharing. So it's been a while since I streamed Discord. I have to pop out everything. I remember now. There we go. All right.
Heck yeah, I'm excited.
Right, yeah, this is gonna be fun. It's gonna be a nice chat. Well, I mean, I know I've been watching your videos for a while. When I became a flat earther, someone immediately pointed me to your channel when I asked one of the questions that they couldn't answer, but they knew that you had the answer and they couldn't quite articulate it. So they were like, I don't know, watch these two videos, right? So I ended up watching them, and I saw what you had, and I was like, yeah, I feel like I know what's going on, but I didn't. I had no idea. The stars took a long time to understand what was going on, and I took 4 or 5 different people's videos of their take and explanation before it made sense to me. But yours was definitely pivotal towards that process. No,
You need to follow along a bit before you understand just one video.
Well, I was a pretty anxious flat earther, right? I was like, okay, no, I need to understand it all. They were like, yeah, so
Yeah.
no one has that answer. I'm like, no. What do you mean nobody knows how the sky works? That can't be. When I watch you do your videos, I think I hear you preface it like, not enough flat earthers know about this right here. This right here is important. This is like, part of the head of knowledge. And I'm always laughing at myself, like, yeah, he's right. No, he's one of the only people that I see with this.
Have you seen this model? Someone made, a couple of guys from New Zealand made. This is how it works. The center turns, projects an image out to the south all the way around.
Oh,
And
that
the
model, yes.
and the alignment, what religion's all about is these two Milky Ways lining up, the northern hemisphere lining up with the southern hemisphere. He'll get it over there. He gets it over there. I'm not sure if that's the only time you'll get an alignment. And they're lining up anyway. But this is the divine alignment, getting the Milky Ways to line up. But basically, this is how the whole sky works. It all comes from the center north, projects out all the way around. It could be, South America, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. You're all getting the rotation. It's going to be slightly more revolved than the previous one.
That right there.
That.
Yeah, that's
Really
a
good,
wonderful creation that shows the cogs of the wheel. So if it actually, he made it so that if you spin the middle one, it then drives by gears and teeth all the other wheels around it, and then the proper precession of the equinox approaches. Now, like, he uses 6 outside wheels, but I think the concept that we always use, like, it can be 6, 4, 10, 12, infinite. It doesn't matter. The concept applies equally all across the out. But that's a wonderful way to illustrate it for sure.
It's infinite because everybody's on a meridian, so he'll have his circular image in the south. But it's not this easy. You can't line up these stars because the southern field expands as you move out. This is why people are finding it hard to align the stars.
Tell me about
these it. Southern ones are just expanding as you move south. It becomes quite tricky to line northern stars up with the south.
It absolutely is. Now, can you tell that visually from just looking at them that they're longer, elongated, darker, dimmer?
Sort of. In the southern hemisphere, you know that they're spreading out more.
Right.
It's hard to tell because it's all related to your zenith. We all have the 180-degree dome, 360 degrees around us. That's your image, but it's all relative to the observer. This observer doesn't know that it's expanding as you move south. So it's all related to the observer.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you'd figure things out, but
I mean,
things add up. Lots of little things add up. The fact that Sigma Octan is well, it won't add up to people, but I know it does. That Sigma Octan is a single star, and I know it's a mirrored image of Polaris, and Polaris is the 3-star system. I don't know. It's understanding star rotations, star trail photography, and time lapse, watching the stars, seeing what they do. But it began with me when I was doing star trails of the celestial equator. That's when you get the two curves of each hemisphere, and Orion's belt is in the gap, and taking several shots of the different angles. Start from wherever east and take a few star trail shots over the night. Probably only get about 2 or 3 out. You can see the revolving around the center north, the northern horizon. You just know it's revolving. You just see it revolving, and it all makes sense when you add it up to a lot of other things.
It kind of makes sense intuitively, but I didn't even know what a star trail was, or had ever even looked at the sky for more than what it was as a background before I became a flat earther. Right, but as soon as I became a flat earther, they were like, "Okay, but yeah, Earth's flat and star trails." You're like, "Star what?" Like, they figure out, like, "Oh, perfect circle. Yeah, that's pretty." Like, no. Let me tell you what it is. Like the significance of that,
Well,
and then
we
quickly.
first all come to realise the central. Everyone talked about the tree of life, the central tree in the centre, the Mount Meru, whatever you want to call it, central vortex. I mean, they're just saying it on the. Even the news is talking about the Arctic vortex creating this in meteorology, the wind, blah blah blah. And there's the vortex there. It's obvious, the vortex, and it's described in the Bible as the four winds. And they come together through convection to spin this vortex at the centre, and that all comes about from the ice in the Arctic and the warmth in the tropics and the ice at the other end, the Antarctic. So it's always been an ice at each end and the warmth in the middle. When they tell you the whole world was covered in ice, it's just total BS because the whole system wouldn't work. What's going to move the magnetic field? Because the magnetic field is in the wind. There would be no wind because it's all cold. All wind. You have to have the cold at each end and the warmth in the middle. There's no worldwide flood either. That's a joke. Everything
Really?
comes up out of the water. It's recycling. Earth recycles all the time. It's up and down, in and out of the water over millions of years. And
No great
you've
flood,
got
huh?
the Buford Gaia. What's turning the central rotation stars? How come that's going anti-clockwise? But you look downward onto the ground, there's the Buford Gaia going the opposite direction, which means it's the same spin. It's all the centre Arctic.
So definitely a vortex. You gotta get onto the vortex in the center of the Earth theory. That's unavoidable with the measurements that we have for interferometry. The way that we know the system works is there's definitely a measurable motion instead of the driver of motion. There is motion to be measured and seen that we watch the sky move. So the vortex drives the motion, and interferometry measures the vortex.
Yeah. So once you understand the vortex, something gets you onto the fact everything's mirrored because all this ancient text is always talking about mirrors, this, mirrors that. There's a mirror effect somewhere. You'll think, well, hang on, maybe the southern field's mirrored. So you start looking into it, and then hello. Like the example is Orion's belt. And you look at Sirius and Rigel. They are the only two stars with Orion's belt. Yet we look up in the sky and we see the four: Sirius, Rigel, Aldebaran, and Betelgeuse. But you're seeing Aldebaran and Betelgeuse in the other hemisphere because it's on the other side of Orion's belt. Orion's belt signifies the centre between the two hemisphere rotations. You've got, Sirius and Rigel up this side of the belt on my southern top side, looking from the south, and I can see in the northern hemisphere there's Betelgeuse and Aldebaran. And you see it the other way around. At the end of the day, it's just the two stars mirrored to the other hemisphere.
Okay,
It's
to
a
hold up now.
no-brainer, that one.
Hold on. There's a mirror on the reverse side for the O'Brien. So if I'm looking, let's see, where am I? If I'm looking what, southwest, where would I find the appropriate mirror for them?
You can just look straight wherever Orion's belt is. Just look at Orion's belt,
Okay.
and I only can mention it from the. Oh, I have to go left hand. That's it. Just go with your left hand. You take your left hand up, and so Orion's belt, the bottom three fingers. There's Sirius and Rigel. With my right hand, it's Orion's belt. They're passing through like this. Go through like this on a star trail, but you'll only be seeing three stars in a line. In star trail, you see it like this, zooming across the sky, and there's Sirius and Rigel. This isn't looking from the southern hemisphere, but you'd use this hand, the left hand, and you'd be looking south, and it'll be moving west like this. Remember, the Orion's belt is the divider between my hemisphere and there's yours.
Right.
That just gets mirrored down to here, but it's spun in that mirror effect. That becomes down here, and that comes below that becomes below the belt. And that one goes over there.
So
over there. You know what I mean?
that was the first one I looked at for a hopeful parallel and some symmetry, and I couldn't figure out where to look. The thing is, even if you know where to look, to find the proper time and then to find the proper spin, because you're going to take a slice of a gear in the sky at a particular junction and then swing it around to like an oscillation. And then if you didn't line it up right, then the whole thing ends up being wrong. And I didn't realize how hard that would be until I realized how many different ways you could do that. And then I was like,
Yeah.
oh no. Okay.
No, yeah, no, it's too hard. But that's the obvious one. Everyone can see this one. Toroidal and Sirius, the Orion's belt. You got that?
So absolutely.
You got the two curves of the sky almost
Yeah.
meeting. Southern hemisphere meeting the northern hemisphere, or the other way around, with Orion's belt and the gap. You got the two stars above the Orion's belt and the two below. They're just flipped, the same stars.
So then you agree with like the premise that as early as boy. Hold on.
Muted. You're muted.
Oh yeah, his dog's barking. He's
I think
dealing
he's
with that
tending
really
to the
quick.
dog. Yeah.
Okay. Some passages in this pyramid text, just telling the whole story of the, it's all written on the tomb walls. I'll read you this one, if I can see it. 2 pairs of glasses. Liturgy in itself contained the west-east momentum of the south wall text is continued into the east wall, where it becomes a movement from south to north. Utterance 219. At the east end of the south wall actually spins over into the east wall at its southern end and has to be contained in a northerly direction. Significance of the south-north axis is the south is the direction of the southern constellations, which change through the cycles of the year, whereas north is the direction of the imperishable northern stars, apparently immune to time and change. South is also a direction like the west, particularly associated with the Dwat, whereas in the east, the king experiences solar rebirth, in the north, blah, blah, blah.
What book is that?
This is the shamanic wisdom and the pyramid text. It's really well written by this guy, Jeremy
I like that.
Neidler. And so the northern stars never alter. They're always there. So just imagine that circular rotation. You see that picture over there? No, probably can't.
I got a picture up that I'm pulling. Let's see, you're drawing with
On
your
my
central
whiteboard
vortex.
over there. Yeah. As the season changes, the northern hemisphere vortex goes up, the northern summer, and then it comes back down and out for the southern summer. Up and in.
So we know that the sun rises and goes inward with the seasons, right? It doesn't just change its speed; it goes rising and lowering, so that it's brought up by the toroidal breathing of the field that moves it that it's in all day, right? That goes, the whole thing goes up and down.
Yeah, that breathing. I made a note of that.
As soon as I
read this note here. I've got righteous seasonal changes. This goes back to the holy trees in religion in the Bible, and that talk about sometimes, or maybe another text talks about the 12 holy trees, or sometimes the 5th holy tree. So the 5 holy trees are the constellations during this seasonal change through the constellations. When they mention the 5 holy trees, they're referring to the 5 holy days. So the 12 tribes of Israel, sometimes they just call them villages, but this is all the whole Bible is about the spiritual story of this alignment between the two Milky Ways align, and where the full moon is at that time, because the full moon, sun's in the Milky Way, you know that, eh? you see the Milky Way at night, you see the back of the sun as Sagittarius A, science tells us. It's Sagittarius A, but that's the back of the sun. It's poking out the kneecap on the other side. For every new moon, the moon enters the Milky Way, which is the male chamber. And that's right up in the face of the sun, but the sun's on the other side of the black hole, shining across the black hole, and the moon's on this side here. It's new moon. And full moon, moon's in the Milky Way, but it's right out at the other end, furthest away. And what happens is when you get this divine alignment of the Milky Ways, it'll be passing over a constellation. That's part of the makeup of man. Like which constellation are you from? Which tribe are you from? Be one of those. But this all refers to your second birth, not your physical birth. Your goal in life is to go through the second birth. That's when you find out which tribe you're from. And this, all the stories in the Bible are all about the different stories of the different prophets, which probably represent the different tribes. Anyway, I started thinking about these trees, and something was telling me there's something going on between the tree branches, because you get the conifers type tree going up this way with your branches. You got some going down like that. This is the way the ecliptic plane goes. That's what they're trying to tell us. It's all about the ecliptic plane going like this. The Bible's describing it in trees, but the ancient Egyptians describe it with the wings of the bird. They show you a bird quite often with the sun here. And so I knew there's something happening between the branches. And took me down. It took me probably about a year to finally figure it out and realize, shit, there is something going on between there. And that's where it is over there, between the seasonal change. When the top north pops up, there's a gap. And when the southern hemisphere star rotations start coming up in the winter season, they slip under there, and that's earthquakes in the Bible. When they mention earthquakes in the divine period, meaning subduction, it's going under there. So it's this gap, and it's going down into Amente. A lot of mythological stories talk about going down there into the Amente, like Perseus and her daughter. Her daughter goes down there, something with the Zeus story. So between the branches of the up and down seasonal changes, you think of the trees with the upward branches and the trees with the downward branches, representing the up and down fixing of the Milky Way. As the sun follows the Milky Way, plane of the Milky Way, the magnetic field, basically.
Yep.
The sun is, this, even though the central sun of creation that does not move, it just does its circles. Its image is projected out along the ecliptic plane. When the ecliptic plane goes out and down and out, the sun is down and out, moving out along one of the magnetic field lines at a particular hour, and then it keeps moving around to the west. So the day changes. The field's always moving.
From the south, you were able to figure out that, like, so you went, something doesn't look right in the splayed out arches of these star trails. And I think that what I'm seeing is a reflection of the inner stars. I still can't marvel how you get over that observation, because for us in the north to grow, like to become a flat earther and try to figure out the sky, presented with like the southern sky as like, okay, well, here's some place that you've never been, that we tell you everything's the inverse. And most flat earthers were like, nah, I'm not buying it. I don't think, like, which is not really a good position to defend. So when you don't understand something, it's hard, like you don't see it, it's hard to understand it. And for you to go from the opposite and be like, no, I'll figure it out from the inverse with one eye open when I'm barely awake. Like,
well, that's where people have to open their minds, of just stop just following NASA and thinking everything's physical. Every man has the same size arc of horizon, so you can see that in Star Trail. Everyone gets their rotation, dead north to south on their. That's their slice of their dome, basically their image. If you turn the camera slightly to east or west, it all starts warping away. That's one way to sort of imagine it expanding, but
that is what it does, right? But that's hard to imagine if you haven't seen it warping away. Like, so the lower the star gets on your horizon, the harder it is for you to see. It's almost like it's only there for you. When you say man's arc of horizon, you're just talking about the visual limit of space that everyone shares, that you see the things in the celestial heavens at your local horizon as it rises and sets, as it comes and goes.
Yeah, but if it's not a local horizon, what the hell does NASA or Stellarium want your zenith for?
Because it can't do anything without it.
Because that's all based on your dome. It's just your 180-degree dome from where you are. You always stand 90 degrees to your zenith. It's like in
100%
celestial
agree.
navigation.
Right.
Celestial navigation has to know your zenith. So that's why you take that angle reading to the horizon, bring it up to the angle, but they want to know from there to your zenith. That's where they make their calculations. That gives them the GP point from there to that star you just measured.
Yep.
It's all about man's zenith.
It is, though, especially when you're trying to talk about the celestial heavens. The biggest observation is, and it's kind of like mind blowing, is that it's all personal. Meaning, everything up there is there for you personally to see, and like just like the sun that has like rays of light that you can see only, that travel to follow you on a pond right to your shoe and no one else's. Everything in the heavens follows that rule. It's literally all there for you. And then you revisit a term like man's arc of horizon, and I'm like, this guy knew more than I think he like when you first heard the term. That nailed it, right?
Well, I read that. I saw that. I think that term was found in here. It's actually written in there, I think. Egyptians write about it. They tell us everything. All the clues are in those two books. Yeah, it mentions arc of horizon, man's arc of horizon.
I hadn't
and then
heard
it all makes
that
sense,
before.
doesn't it? When you understand what zenith cameras are for. NASA have a zenith camera for?
It made sense to me just because I think I heard you mention, this is one of my questions, that like Witsit calls it azimuthal grid of vision, but like that only happened because we brought forth the star argument, which literally had to utilize that personal dome to first make sense of sun angles and conquer. Like if flat earthers can't give the height for the sun because the multiple angles would collapse it. However, it fixes that mathematically and perfectly is that personal grid with a local sun and a projection sun. So once you figure that out, I mean, the rest of it kind of works perfectly. But like when we brought that forward to Witsit, everyone had their own term. Jaren had been doing it before. He called it personal dome. Of course, P-Brain put it forward and called it, something else. But once you look at all like the utilization, it was the same principle. Everyone had figured out different stages, different parts, called it a different thing. But that's to make the stars work. That's what you have to do. That's the only way, because that's how it is, right? The heavens are personal to you. That's the whole thing.
That's right. That's where do you think Einstein got his phrase from? Relative to the observer. Him and his mates. He's just rewriting history based on their globe idea, knowing they can control the minds. Borealis, well, they just say it's the Earth's toroidal magnetic field, the curve of the toroidal magnetic field. In the Bible, it's called the plowshare.
What about the idea that you can't have that stuff on a sphere? It wouldn't even work out to actually like a ripple in a flat water. That doesn't even work on rounded water. So the idea that these things like work in the idea of a spherical shape, I think it's fucking crazy.
It's stupid. Just you see the motion of the waves. They don't do circles. They just big lines down the beach. You've got to come back to a pond to understand the ecliptic wave and that. You drop a stone in the middle and watch the wave go out. That's our ecliptic plane, and those high points represent the focal points of that wave strength. But one will represent a planet. Just sort of understand that sort of stuff.
So
everything in our realm is related to creation. You can start marrying things like this whole design up here. You can see the feminine side and you understand the male side. My very first videos talked about the moon. Then I started correlating it with all the female genitals. It all works the same way. And the moon represents the woman. Full bloom, full pregnancy is full moon. This is the whole spiritual story of the Egyptians, that when the moon can give birth on only those 5 holy days. It's not mythological. It's myths to frickin' the ignorant, but they're messages to the wise. You know, you got to open your mind up and think, what is that referring to? And then you find, what are these 5 holy days? Where are they? So initially you think, oh yeah, because everyone tells you, the sun stays still, doesn't move in declination at the solstices and all that. But it comes back to the crossing in the sun's analemma. Well, you get at least 3 days there. You might get 1 day, because it's associated to the with the solar eclipses. So do we get solar eclipses at the solstices? I haven't looked into that. But you get the solar eclipses, the divine ones, at the crossing of the sun's analemma.
What's the divine solar eclipse?
There's 2. There's one in the on the cusp of Leo and Virgo, and the other one's Taurus and Gemini. I think one's male, one's female. And at the other end of the cross, the bottom end, if you've got Cancer at the top, they represent the full moons line across the zodiac. It's what all religion's all about, but no one's clicked onto it, so I'll expose all that later.
You've seen David Weiss, I presume, and done his watched his routine, go through the process, the low level things of what works in one bucket, what works in both buckets, like what works for flat Earth and what works for globe, right?
I haven't, but yeah, a lot of things correlate, but everything works with the flat Earth. Globe can't explain everything.
Well, yeah, it turns out because he does new people interviews all the time, and the joke is, of course, that everything fits in flat Earth and nothing fits in globe only, but the sky as a whole, right? I think you have to at least say it fits equally well in both, just because of the severity of coordinate system transforms, the literally because of relativity, and you could transform between reference frames. That I have to say it's as equal, but with the sky, their explanation for the self that's wrong and simple and like not encompassing as it would be is the the lid to overturn, because people are trying to feel like, well, if I look down, I see my feet, and that's where it should be. Try to convince them of anything else is like beyond hard. So like that's like the main argument to get over is the sky, to like just not to be like rife, but like think the densest person that and just think if you could try to convince them of this, because that's what we probably have to deal with.
Well, yeah, it's hard because if they don't want to open their mind, you can't get through to them, because you've got to use this thing. I mean, our whole realm is about this thing. They're just locked in this physical aspect side of it. They don't realize there's a non-physical. It's all metaphysical.
Right.
Like there's nothing physical above us.
Are you
once you start understanding that central vortex, if you can make a model with the spiral, full with background stars, because it goes up the spiral and down the spiral over 24 hours. And you reflect that light out, and you create all these spheres, these domes, you'll see the declination, what's actually happening with the movement. As that spiral turns, you'll see the thing go over your dome like this.
Right? The first time I saw Gleason's track of the sun's path in that perfect spiral as it arced in and then arced out, that's what it does all the time.
It's always arcing over your arc of horizon.
Yeah.
It's back at creation. It's actually a spiral curve.
Right. Are you aware of the reverse engineering that went into that? Like the measurements of the globe, like where the radius comes in, how that affects where they derived it from, and how it relates to like elevation angles to Polaris, essentially?
Yeah, it's all math and geometry, understanding the arc. The meridian, the 180-degree curve that comes out of the north all the way over to the south.
I call it a cheap trick. It's just like a really cheap way to explain the sky. Like, oh, well, the ground beneath your feet is just curved, and it's kind of just a way to avoid the necessary, the actual necessary effects of optics that you have to take into a place with an extending hyperbolic geometry, or fields of hyperbolic geometry that we actually see in. And to actually explain the complex sky that's not meant to be so easily explained, they wanted to pretend like they could explain everything. So they made up a cheap trick about the ground beneath our feet being curved and us living on a ball.
But like, so
the
trick
down to logic. Logically, do you want to think you're living on a flat plane, or do you think you're living on the outside of a spinning ball? And You know, if
Well,
you put that on
They have
people
to
that
they
weren't
have to invoke
indoctrinated,
they have to invoke the illogical, unfathomably, relatively infinite distances, which is already kind of illogical on its face. And then they have to invoke that to even make it start to make any sense at all. That's why I just call it a cheap trick. There's no there's no substantiation for it to stand on.
well, it's brilliant though.
everything about the globe is just stupid, but people have just been brought up believing it.
Honestly,
It's
I
fully
agree.
indoctrinated.
Except for this.
Yeah.
I think this one deception about the sky is fucking just like deviously brilliant. Because when you look at like the math that they use, and we're like, so the 3959, like the elevation angle to Polaris being the exact radius of the sphere they tell me I live on is like, okay, we've determined the rate at which the world curves around you if you live on an infinite flat plane and things just, disappear. And we've told you that the ground at your beneath your feet curves at that level. And most of the people will never figure it out based on that correlation alone. Like that would be enough. So they take that, they know what they're talking about, and they say, look, when you walk that far, you walk off the side of the ball. That's why you can't see it. Everything else works from that one deception because it lends itself so well to a ball. It's just to see what they did is like, oh, how clever you bastards.
Yeah, I know. So many concepts to it, like understanding. You've got to imagine a ring magnet, and the ring magnet has a flux. We're in that flux, part of the magnetic field, electromagnetic field, and everything is of the light.
Well,
And can't get out of that field, can't leave that field.
so it's definitely magnetic, but there's this whole discussion about a bar magnet because we didn't know that a double bowl magnet provides actually like a double torus magnetic field, which is slightly different kind of magnetic field line that you can play with to feel it out. And what you get is like a powerful double toroid with an ejection zone and like an cling zone with a null zone where things don't have any magnet. Anyway, the complicated magnetic force actually turns out to be like the proper distribution of things at their smallest level. When they're talking about atoms, it's just really a double toroid. The smallest things that people can reduce to is just the magnetic double field, and that's the breakdown of the primer fields. When he did that, he broke it down to that, and he applied it to astral stuff and jets in the sky, which was surprisingly useful. But really, he figured out the forces of magnetism are the only forces on this world that do anything. They control everything.
Yeah, true. So we've got the flat plane of inertia, but we only live on this top half, so the rest of it doesn't concern us. But the magnetic field must hold around like this, just like your rib cages.
Yep, its motion is its
and we live in a
stability.
dual realm, and this is what happens up to the tropics. You've got that coming up to the poles. I mean, it's doing this. That's the infinity symbol. So they knew all about that way back in the day.
Yep.
They knew it's the shape of the brain because that goes Sophia. That goes back to Sophia. Like Sophia, the word Sophia's been around since at least the 4th century. But sphere and globe, Globe came in like 1600 or something, made up Freemason junk. Sophia goes back to intelligence. They're basically describing Earth as intelligent. It's the brain. And when you do that cross section through flat Earth model, you've got the brain shape. That's the way the magnetic field moves as well. It's the infinite symbol through that brain shape.
So you're paying. So you mean the tropical gap from the two hemispheres that goes into the tropical gap to negate at the equator, giving it the lowest charge at the equator? Is that what you mean by going in?
Well, it's just a blown up version of the black hole. It comes race to the black hole, spins around the black hole. That's the divergent zone, the no-go zone. It just doesn't. It's just the avoidance zone.
The avoidance zone.
And so
right.
the tropical gap, the tropical ring around flat Earth, is representing that black hole area. Field comes to it, and then changes its field, just like in a 3-phase induction motor. Comes over and shoots off at a 120-degree angle. This is what it does. That's that changeover that boosts the magnetic field.
The changeover.
That's what's happening in the tropical zone.
The null zone, the flip zone, the inverse zone. That's when they did the double bowl magnet. That's what it creates, is like a polarization zone where before it goes through, it flips it. Yeah, that happens at
And
the
then
equator.
they sort of described that in white. I saw this on Quora. I've got a photo here, I think. Oh no, I don't think I did. Describing why man looks solid. See if I can find it. Gallery. No, I didn't take a photo. Bummer. Carried away with something else, I think.
So let's
uh,
see.
But it's basically describing the black hole. But could say like everything we see is like they call a particle or an electron. We're going with that because that's the visual. That's what your eyes are picking up on. The frequencies. Yeah, no, I haven't got that sort of on my mind. Can't go into that.
You're not
too
going to say
deeply.
particles, are you? The smallest things
so-
are
Yeah,
particles.
well, that's what they call them. It's that just the image you see in your eyeballs. It's what you have to pick up. You see an image.
I
and
just see
gotta
little
call it
double
a particle.
toroids when I hear your particles.
It's really, it's
I'm
just a
little-
wave.
Are frequencies, resonance, and vibrations important considerations to understand the stars?
Well, everything comes from resonance, sound, and vibration. That's what comes out of the black hole. See, everything's sound. They all resonate to sound.
Right, moving toroidal fields create electricity, and then you move that together, creating sound, vibration, and frequency is everything.
Like, yeah, and the plasma fields. He describes what the stars and planets, or the rotations and all that are. It's sort of shrapnel from this plasma sun burst.
So
yeah,
Cool.
it's all light is frequencies, isn't it?
everything
Sound
in the
is
sky,
light.
everything in the sky is coming out of the middle, right? So nothing in the sky is physical. That's for sure. I just want to make sure that we're of the same opinion, because that's definitely what I think. That the sun isn't physical, the moon isn't physical, the stars certainly aren't physical. Wandering stars are just lights as far as we can tell. It's certainly not balls of gas that we can go to. So it would make sense to me that they could all be non-physical. Like why would one be one way and some be the other? But then you gave me that phrase that apparently all the ancients knew, like nothing above your head is physical. It's well known, like duh. I'm like, oh, that's reassuring to come to that conclusion as well.
You only have to only spend a couple of days looking at the moon when I first started all this flat earth stuff.
Right.
With my P900, realizing that's not physical. And then you start reading stories about skin, and something about the lion's skin, and then the lion's fingernail, phasing and all that sort of stuff. And it all sort of added up. And it just brought all the puzzles together, just made the whole picture. So I understand the whole picture, but it's trying to get it across to people. But it's whether they want to believe it or not, or want to learn.
100%. Yeah, I've been trying to understand the whole picture since I got here. I think what I discovered was that most people aren't seeking to understand the whole picture. Most people are like seeking to understand just enough to be included and liked, and then they don't care anymore. So like all the truth, no, we don't really care about what it is. We just want to get together and be like, what we're gonna do is talk about curvature for 3 years. Don't worry about the stars. But the desire to understand, well, if it's not what this is, then I have a general burning desire to know what the hell it actually is. Like, well, wait a second, the fact that we don't know things is inspiring as a flat earther. When we can be like, someone's like, what are the stars? And I'm like, no idea. It's gonna be great. Let's go figure it out. We're still figuring that out, and not to be like heliocentric model. Well, we know for absolute certainty that stellar spectroscopy proved without a doubt the chemical makeup of the thing sitting in a field of hydrogen is definitely itself made of hydrogen. And you're like, okay. All right, buddy. Like, you don't know. Just say you don't know. Stop fucking around.
Yep.
I don't know. The plasma field stuff, they just talk about it being plasma. But it's all based on frequencies. Like every star up there is supposed to represent a living thing on Earth.
Huh.
We're resonating frequency, and that's basically a condensed image. We come down to the physical world, creates an image in the magnetic field. We've got this image. Up there, it's just a star. It's a light. Man, up there. It's just understanding that nothing's physical. We're just these vibrating atoms. It creates this field.
Well, let's see. So back to the stars, because I need to understand everything about the stars that you think you know. Like, so if there's only one central moving set, that rotates, that then gets reflected out towards the south. How, like, so would you say there's two sources of rotation because we see two, or would you say there's only one because there's only one that gets mirrored into two? Like, so it's a matter of perspective.
There's only the one central vortex, and everything's in there. That's turning all the way out to the Tropic of Cancer.
Mm.
In the rest of the field, images is mirrored.
That's the only way it can be.
Off that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, because
it all makes sense.
Well, I mean, like, so I've been harboring doubt and trying to get to this point, but our friend Alan did work on interferometry, rediscovering the fact that they've already measured this source of motion, and that without a doubt, for the longest time, beyond any consideration, there is one source of motion, one rotation that they have been measuring, because they measure the speed as it emanates outward, and as you change elevation, it's well documented and known. So then when people try to include, well, yeah, there's definitely two rotations, absolutely, without a doubt, can say there's only one. Interferometry would have picked it up because it would have picked it up that pesky Earth's orbital velocity as well. They are super sensitive, and there's only ever, now, without a doubt, one rotation.
Well, physics knows everything goes back to singularity, and that singularity is the dead center Arctic. It's the central vortex. That's we all come out of there. It's singularity. That's the non-physical realm. That's creation. We can't get back into it. So it projects out, and our realm becomes duality. Need that duality, that dielectric gap, to create the energy that feeds back in to feed the black hole and the plasma sun, keep the whole system going. Like that Rodin coil. He was onto it. He said he had all the right literature and everything. He only had a singular unit. It has to be a dual unit. It has to have the gap. That's where all the energy is created in that gap. All about magnetism. Dielectric plates. What's happening between the two dielectric plates? Monopoles on each side, south and north. Just the right gap. And Tesla talks about this perfect gap. So he I think him or someone was trying to hide it, and he called it the man's energy. He's talking about that gap of the tropical zone and how to get the energy in these motors.
But that's like the null zone, the Ken Wheeler part, when he was playing with magnets and pushing the field. That's the time it would get stuck to the side of a null zone where it wasn't attracted or repelled, and it would ride the side of it. And that's what you get in the middle when you get tremendously tumultuous toroidal energy. The movement gives it the stability, which creates the block domain wall, which is the place that we live between the top and the bottom. But if you misunderstood magnetism and thought that everything was a bar magnet, you would assume that our south pole and the antipode to the north would be somewhere in the south along an edge. But then you understand, it's a double toroid, meaning everything up here is one field, below is where the negative field would start, and there's a flip point near the base, which would be on the block domain wall.
No matter what size or shape the magnet is, it does the same magnetic field. It does these figure 8 loops. Go up and over. There'll be a dividing point between the north and the south pole. It'll be like an equator. It'll go up and go down, swing around the pole and come back up over and do this thing. It's going over, down through the ground, spin around the hole, back up and over and back out again. It's that guy that was on YouTube.
So the stars are moving from the central vortex, but would you say that, let's see, the toroidal, do you think that the magnetic field that it moves in is toroidal in shape? The stars?
Well, you've got to think of the two at the same time. You've got to think of the wind. It's the magnetic field. So the wind spinning around like this, and up from its spin, casts the magnetic curved field lines. You spin anything like that, you've seen plenty of images on when they're trying to spin water, like imitating the globe, spinning the water spinning off. Those plowshare waves is the magnetic field wave and the curved lines. And that's what's doing it, the central spin, spinning out the wind, spinning out the magnetic field.
So everything everything moves in that magnetic field. Yeah. The sun moves, so I'm not sure if it moves through the nodes or it pulls the magnetic field, but it moves within the magnetic field, which means all the luminaries move along according to the magnetic field, right?
Well, the central sun just turns around the perimeter of the black hole and projects its light out, images out along that that flying wave, moving magnetic field wave. The sun is seen anywhere out there because the sun is electromagnetic, isn't it? It's following the magnetic field. They're nodal points in the net, you could call it, because you've got the field going out, but you've also got one coming back in. It creates all these nodal points.
Right. I remember thinking that's what the sun was doing, but it's good to be corroborated, right? So when you're thinking about a southern sky and the southern rotation, it actually would be directly influenced by, say, what you call the wind, right? But I think when you say wind, we definitely could agree on ether wind, because the ether wind is what we call the source of the movement. If we're measuring movement, then we're calling it the ether wind. If anything is moving, the ether wind is driving it. So we would say that the Earth's toroidal magnetic field. Yeah. Well, what we call
calls it Coriolis effect, but that's what it is. It's the magnetic field. The wind carries the magnetic field.
We didn't invent ether wind, right? The old people who were measuring it called it that frequently, and that's what it was known as before they buried it.
Ether wind. Yeah, okay. I've never heard that phrase though.
From the 1900s. Yeah, that's like the source of the movement when they measure it in the sky. And they're like, oh, so it lines up with the sky, and it synchronizes with the sky. It matches solstices and equinox and events in the sky. But what you're telling me what you're actually measuring is the ground. Get out of here. Obviously, the correlation is with the sky and the sky alone, and people knew that. And then people who knew that died, and they were like, hey, the Earth's spinning, and look, we measure it. See all that? We've been measuring it for years. Like, what a big scam bamboozle they pulled on everyone to bogart the evidence that proves we're never been in motion once, to be like, haha, thanks, Bob, we're in motion, right? Like, that whole thing was disgusting.
Well, everything's quite basic. We just concentrate on the northern hemisphere because it just turns. I see like this. It actually it goes down. It spirals down and it spirals back up. Looking at the stars above, it's still just that circular movement, doesn't go anywhere. The southern field does actually come up and go under it, like this. The seasonal changes. That's due to the fact that the vortex goes up and down over the year.
Yep.
So if that goes up, then this field comes in. It moves like this.
See, that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. It has to, so it breathes. So it as a toroid charges and discharges, if you don't believe in positive and negative, it breathes and it contracts and expands.
People ask how it's pumping. How's it doing that? Well, how does your flipping heart pump? Who's doing that? It's in a closed unit, isn't it? It's all magnetism, a magnetic field.
Yeah, it's not a pump, right? Like it moves the blood via the electromagnetic field of structured water. That's exactly how it does.
Back to these trees I was talking about here. Something's happening between the branches. It made me think, you got to think of the Christmas tree. It's all associated with it. Christ standing like a Christmas tree image. And you got the tree of life. Who was sitting under the tree? In the Bible, it talks about sitting under the tree. Sitting under the olive tree or sitting under the oak tree. And they're basically telling you, see, that's the tree of life. You're under the tree. It's this particular time in the season. That's the early spring. At a particular time, but right through that period, it's open. And then as the southern season disappears in the south, it starts coming out and it closes up again. It goes like this. There's your toroidal field, but as the season changes, it goes like this.
Tree.
So that's what got me onto that. This is the up and down of the northern hemisphere opening between the north and south, right in the gap. The subduction zone, the underworld, where the southern hemisphere slips under the earth as an earthquakes. Southern rotations moving up in the north are an observable event. Anyone can confirm that. Pretty sure science knows that.
Moving up like what? With a season, with a day, with a year? Over what interval?
As the season moves, like you can film the star rotation. Oh, no, without even filming it. You can just see the crux down there on the southern horizon. But then in the middle of winter, it's right up here, almost at my zenith. You can see that everything's moved up.
How interesting.
And it seemed to correlate with a lot of other information I had, and then it all makes sense.
Right. So
I've got southern rotations moving up to the north, an observable event. Antikythera mechanism and the Prague clock have that circular rotation. As it goes around, it comes in, isn't it? secondary ring. You got the big main one, which is Earth. You got this one representing the seasons. As it's turning, it starts moving in towards the near center of the Earth, then spirals back out again.
Yep.
It's the same thing. That's it. That's what the
So-
sun's doing.
Right, so you can deduce actually from the sun's actual path, and people have that what it is doing is following the toroidal motion and going up and down. It's the raising and lowering and increasing its tangential velocity accordingly. But so it's literally just in the expanding, contracting, and/or charging and discharging toroid as it breathes and pulse, contracts as it expands, and it goes with it as it rises up. It comes back down to like speed. That's exactly what it's doing. That's so wonderful
Yeah. And then
to figure that
at
out.
the same time, try and picture like a jellyfish. It goes up and down because that represents the ecliptic plane. It's just be a flat plane, but that curves down for down and out and up and in. And all the planets are on those high points of the wave. And, it goes down and out for southern summer and up and in for the northern summer.
Talking about the path of the wandering stars, is that affected by it as well?
Wandering stars are the planets. They're on the high points of that wave. They're the particles your eye picks up on, the focal point of the wave frequency.
But,
As it comes out from the center, it's getting redshifted, isn't it? The frequencies, waves getting wider, lower frequency. We have to see a focal point. We're reading the frequencies. Everything in our realm is our eyeballs reading the frequencies. Everything's about sound. And sound creates color and gives us the images for our brain. Someone just sent me a science video regarding meteorology, weather, and where we're using the term Arctic vortex.
Oh,
Yeah.
they like to
was
use the right
yesterday.
terms, yeah. But that central vortex, that's a key aspect to understanding the rest of it, because that's, first of all, embracing the motion that we see and measure and use and utilize, and then understanding the motion as the engine of the thing that drives everything that we see and feel. And then you can understand how you see in the south when your star field rises as one static object, you can understand that it's actually the pull from the inner as the toroidal breathing continues and its seasonal like ups and downs. That's quite amazing. I don't think it was so hard to figure this out from the north when 88% of the world sees the northern hemisphere, but then like 7 people are like, nah, flat earthers, look at all this shit. And you're like, huh, okay, well, wait, is everything like reversed down there? Well, hold on now. I thought that everything just revolved around this one up here, but down there, it looks like, yeah, I don't know what the hell's going on, guys. Let me ask somebody, like that's how it started. It's like, well, hold on. So you're saying that there's a place where all this just decides to go the other way, huh? Well, yeah, shit, I don't know how to explain that right now. Like, no idea.
Well,
how
it's
that
easy.
works. Yeah.
Well, I've done that. If we could create the model, people would just click on straight away. You create this, like on over here, like the loaf of bread with the central vortex, and you create your S curve and all the lights on that S curve, and you turn it because of the curving concave outer field of the south. It creates a parabolic image where it's mirrored, reversed, and projected back to the observer. Parabolic reflection. It's right there on its horizon. It's right there. The image is right there. The stars aren't thousands of miles away. It's just right there in your horizon.
Your own horizon.
Stars could be like at night, could be anywhere between 5 miles away, beyond.
So that's the other hard thing. People are so like held up in, well, what I see is what everyone sees. Like, all right, to get beyond this, you have to understand that your little vision that you see on the sky is for you alone. Like, do you think that everyone in the whole hemisphere sees exactly half of the sky, and that what you're seeing is experienced by everyone? Well, no. Like, there are people who witness the inverse of your sky at all times. But some of this visualization art is some of the stuff that helped me picture it. Not one of them did it by itself. I couldn't understand what this meant, but finally all of it together, like when I finally saw the business model, I was like, oh, all right.
Well, that's
So
why science says everything billions of miles away. Billions of miles
right?
away.
They fixed their math problems by putting it. Well, what we did with the last one, we pushed it to infinity. Push it to infinity. Push them all to infinity. Fuck it. It's like it's between 1 and
right.
some number, but just say, okay, great. You didn't fix anything. You just pushed it to an invisible scale, and then you get things like stellar parallax. You measure in arc seconds to the bajillionth of a millisecond, and you're like, okay, listen, like no. the problem we had wasn't fixed. The distance to the celestial objects is variable because they appear in different places for each person, right? So you can work with it if you understand what that is. But if you try to do the same one object that everyone sees and triangulate it, it's never worked, right?
Hey, let me get
Also,
in real
it's,
fast and just say
Hey,
thank you,
Gene.
Lindsay, for everything that you do. I like your channel. I like the way that you think about all of it. And here's the deal. I'm only 2 years into the journey of Flat Earth and this truther movement. But in my heart of hearts, the people in this panel, Shane, Whitsitt, Space Audits, Alan, Toby at Aether Cosmology, all you guys are pioneers that are looking at the world for what it is and digging at what the truth is that is against the grain of the helio lie. And honestly, when I watch your channel, Lindsay, I see you as like Neo in the Matrix that sees the code and is figuring out what the absolute truth is. And the world should be praising you and saying, dude, you are really getting it. Yet they'll just like ad hom you in the comments and say you don't have a clue what you're talking about. So I just wanted to come on and say thank you for all your hard work, every video you make, because we're later they're going to be able to go back and be like, he had it right. So y'all keep crushing it.
We love
yeah,
JT.
thanks. Most people are clicking on who are watching me, but I don't know. It must be the algorithms or just YouTube, the system
It's-
where they
Yeah,
think
sad.
they delete me from their subscription
Yeah.
list. I seem
Yep.
to just get the same little group all the
Yeah.
time. Otherwise, you get the odd Glober coming in who's a shill. He knows it's all false, but he's got to keep bullshitting the story.
Yeah.
And
All
they're
your
the only
suspicions are
stupid
true.
comments.
Like, he's
I know
like,
he's
all
being
those
an
things are true.
I know he's being an asshole, so I'll just be an asshole back. I don't mind.
Well, I wanted to
It
personally
doesn't worry
thank
me.
you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank
JT's
you.
he's our moral support and our shining golden light of light and joy. He's always helpful and supportful for everyone. But he's saying the truth because this community knows who you are and knows your contribution. But I think a lot of people are kind of scared to, probably intimidated to ask you any questions. I would guess.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I told them I was on the show today, but I told them it was 7 o'clock New Zealand time. They're all going to miss it.
What time is that now? Is that an hour ago?
It's only 3 o'clock in New Zealand now.
Excuse me. Well, I got
Something
one
else
question.
about. Yep.
Sorry for the lag.
Oh.
I got one question before I hop off. You have a vast amount of knowledge and understanding of what the realm really is. What's your advice for everybody that's learning that the Earth is a topographical, stationary topographical plane, and they're trying to talk to their family or they're trying to see if someone's interested in what they're learning, and they get shut down? Because it has to be frustrating to know everything that you know in your mind, and you would be willing to share it with anybody. But most of the time, people just they say, oh, I've got to work on Monday. Why does it really matter? And why would they lie? And they have all these silly questions. Do you have any advice for how to break through to somebody new to it?
Yeah, don't bother. If they don't want to know, you can't get through to them. I mean, I've got this with my family. They just won't listen to a word I'm saying.
Yeah.
Unless someone's asking and wants to know, don't bother.
Yeah.
Until they open their door, nothing's going in.
Turns out you can't actually wake people up. Yeah, you could just let them wake
now
themselves
and then
up.
I send them stuff like it's real good evidence, but they don't really have the time. They're in the matrix, work, or watching their stupid TV programs and movies and Netflix, and it's just a joke. You stand back and think, oh my God. Unless they're willing to wake up, you don't bother. This is why you have religion, which is the metaphysical, spiritual, then you have the physical world. And they're telling you all the time, the whole story. You read the whole Nag Hammadi library, but if you just, I forget what it's called now. I sort of recommend reading this book instead of the Bible because you can understand a lot of things in there about how they're describing common man and how he thinks and what he's doing, and as opposed to spiritual people that have woken up. It's all described in all these ancient books. You know how that game goes. So you just got to stand back, and it gets quite frustrating for me because I can't discuss anything with anybody. I go to my mother's.
Right.
And
Well-
she's 85. She's had a bit of an awakening. She went through a bit of a spiritual thing, but it sent her off to go to church and that. But she's got no idea what I'm talking about. At least she sits there and listens.
Huh.
And her husband, they got no idea either. And you know, my brothers, they go, "Oh, what difference does it make?"
Program
know.
response number 3.
Well, I'll let y'all get back to the deeper science stuff. I'm going to listen. I've got to go help the kiddos get ready for bed. But I really appreciate your hard work, guys. And the truth will set a lot of people free. I do think it's a spiritual war, or it's like a veil is over some people's eyes. I mean, of course, there's shills and there's people who are just opposition for life. But some people, it's like the veil has to be lifted before they can see it, and that's just what I'm praying for every day whenever I talk to people. But yeah, y'all carry on.
Like, dude, that's a good
Yeah.
point. Imagine Paul Revere
Mate,
trying
thank
to
you.
stop with that lady and not drink tea with her and convince her that the British are coming, but then everyone else died because that lady didn't believe him. You know.
You see
Yeah.
the chat?
Yeah.
That's how you can figure out your personal celestial sphere.
What do you mean figure it out?
What it would
Just
look like.
work on the fact
where
it's
you're there.
180 degrees, a nice symmetrical 180 degrees arc. Everything comes perpendicular to you off that arc. If you think about that, you can understand why science tells you the sun comes in parallel rays.
Yep.
Really, it's just all perpendicular off the arc to you, standing at 90 degrees to zenith of the arc.
Yep.
And then you can
So-
relate that to how they used to do celestial navigation for the ball, because they bring everything back to the center of the ball now. Instead of
Yes.
going to you, 90 degrees zenith,
ECI frame. Yep. To
half
the
the
center.
dome,
Yep.
the arc, they go to the center of the ball. It's a joke.
But still, it's one of the more complicated things to understand, right? So, when I first did it, I don't think I understood that everywhere in the south has their own complete circumpolar set of stars that's visible everywhere. That can be confusing. Like, have you heard of that? Let's say Flat Earth Banjo did like a thing, and then not Professor
Not
Dave
exactly the same.
picked it up about the Southern Cross observation from 3 points in the south.
Yeah, that's the thing. Everybody's getting one because it's all reflected from the dead center. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't
Right.
everyone get one up if there's only one image at the center?
So
It's always slightly rotated wherever you are, east to west, because you're going to get an image here, but it revolves like this because the center's turning. The crux is going to be like that in the west, but it'll be like this back in the east,
splayed, yeah, a little bit
Going
to
like this.
exactly. Yeah.
all the way around the center rotation. One full 360 all the way around to get back to your same spot the next night.
Exactly.
There's only a 4-minute delay. What people can't understand is the fact that the sun's quicker than the stars by 4 minutes.
Right. Well, that's the
Like
difference between solar and sidereal time for sure.
Yeah, 3 minute. They tell you the stars are quicker because that you get that much more stars turning up on the other side at night time. You see, they don't realise that the sun's raced ahead that 4 minutes. If it's chewed up 4 minutes this end, obviously the system's moved this way 4 minutes, so the stars are going to pop out 4 minutes more stars because you just chewed up the other end. You're not reducing the whole system of stars. It's all equal. So if you take 2 from here, you add 2 here, 2 more, goes like this.
So this sort of problem
over
right
the
here.
year. Sorry.
Go ahead. And over the year.
Over the year, the sun almost laps the stars. Cut short by 20 minutes. And that 20 minutes adds to the slippage of the equinox, you see. And over 1 month, the sun laps the moon. I used to think it actually passed it, but the stars, I've recently realised, no, it's cut short to create the whole system. So over 1 month, it probably cut short that little bit on the moon. But over its synodic month, term, 19 years, it's back to exactly where it was.
Yeah, 19 years. So yeah, exactly.
It's knowing the sun is quicker. It's part of the whole flat Earth system, understanding that the sun is quicker and there's only one actual sun at the center doing the projection like a clock hand.
Yes. Or you can run
and all the way
orthogonal.
down the clock arm. all the way down the curving clock arm is where the sun will be, no matter where you are on the latitude. It's the same time on that one magnetic wave. It's moving west.
You say that, but that was a hard thing to figure out, that would be personal for everyone across along that parallel, extending outward infinitely. Like the sun angles is tough to cleanse unless you understand that you need a source projection, which would then be different for each observer, and of course latitude dependent. But this the little picture I have up is that observation of the Southern Cross from 3 different points, and when you actually understand it and include every aspect of the reality, so you have a parabolically mirrored reflected set of a center moving stars, then what direction are they looking is all south, and they're all looking at their own copy of the same mirrored reflection that looks to be exactly where it appears. The answer to that couldn't be simpler. With like,
Yeah.
it's such a tricky one.
It can easily be tested. Anywhere in the southern hemisphere, just get 2 people a couple of 100 miles away. Take the shot of the night sky at the same time, the rotation, catch the rotation, like time lapse, just for a minute or two, and then compare them. You'll see the same stars, but slightly revolved that little bit more for the guy to the west.
Yes.
Exact same image.
The symmetry in the
It's
sky.
easier than trying to compare the southern stars with the northern stars. That's the one you should do.
So there's just I've been doing all sorts of sky symmetry, not just north to south and like east to west, up to down. I figured you can mirror it. So if you just start mirroring it, you'll find the inversion reflection that you need to make soon enough, sort of. I have let's see, like a video that shows the idea of a southern mirrored reflection that kind of travels with the observer is latitude dependent and literally infinite. Could have 1, 2, 6, 10, 100, makes no difference. The principle is the same. It works either way. Let's see.
How do I get to see your images?
I have to share them correctly. Let's see, where did it go? Okay, it's not this, but let's try.
I've just got all the pictures of those people's sites.
Right, the chat. What's the video? I see. So remember how we go when you look on the left-hand panel, you click on my name that says live and then view.
Go live.
I'm live, right? And if you click on me, it says watch stream.
Live. On live.
So if you just hover over Shane right below you and then just hit watch stream.
Below me. The bottom of the main screen.
So right on the main screen, if you on the left panel where you click on people and see names, you have to hover over me, and then it'll say
okay. Okay. Hover over you. Okay, push that.
Stream. Yep.
Oh, there we go.
All right, so I've incorporated that model that your fan sent as well, because I thought immediately that was a good representation of one aspect of the concept that I was currently trying to work over. And it was. You think about it exactly the same way. A lot of people look at that and they go, oh, so this wackadoo thinks there's 6 southern rotations. Ha ha ha. I'm like, well, no, it's an abstract wheel concept of an intricate thing. Like, yeah, honestly, it could be 6, 12, 1. What it is latitude and observer dependent. And that's what the top right one shows, where you just kind of wheel it around and it doesn't matter. As long as you stay at that latitude, they will see their circumpolar stars at exactly the same elevation. Just like in the north, elevation equals latitude for Polaris. You might say that's how they figured that and marked that out. Like it's not a coincidence. It's equal for a reason. And some of the Globers, if you argue with them, will say things like, "Well, you don't. It's not a linear relationship between Polaris and you can't have a different elevation for every latitude." And it's like the ignorance of that statement is astounding to me, that you didn't know that relationship is how they started the whole thing. And now you're gonna come back and say, "I can't have that observation that started it." That's nice of you. I'm done though. Okay.
Yeah, well, as you move south, everything goes down on your northern horizon. You come back in, it goes back up. It's a no-brainer,
right? But I didn't fully get it until I played with this model and saw how it worked like that. As soon as you pop to the south, it just mirrored what it popped right out the other side. The North Pole, it disappeared. The South Pole, oh, so the South Pole is okay. So it's not really there. It's an optical effect. Literally, I think that I was taking through the observations of the South Pole, like the effects, the things that you're seeing, and then properly attributing them to a cause. So we're not trying to say toroidal nonsense word magic creates the southern like so you have a rotation and counter rotation. So you have like a motion, right? So that's induced by perspective. You don't need anything else besides a rolling paper tube looking one direction and the other to see that one uniform motion can look to be going in either direction based on perspective alone, right?
Yep.
Or do you think that's part of the mirroring effect?
Well, it's the mirroring because of the curved southern field. You need that curved southern field to understand everything. And you only have to go and research parabolic mirrors and start getting an idea of what's happening. The southern image is being cast back to you in a circle. If there's a horizontal plane circle at the center, and you get this vertical circle coming back at you, reflected off the curve, concave mirror.
Yeah, parabolic reflections is something that I had to look up before I figured out what it was, and it was surprisingly hard to find one. But I think once I saw what it actually did, I was like, oh, so it reflects in a way. Okay, so it skews it like that, but it's
Got a question.
I start looking into everything. I just go online and it just pops up in front of me like this. If I try to go back and find it, I can never find it. I don't know how it works. It baffles me how things can come to me straight away and make sense. Can I go back and find it again? No. Like one of the very early ones was the human brain. I thought, shit, that's bloody blah blah blah. I don't know what it was. And I've never ever been able to find that image of the brain again. That image showing me exactly what I wanted to know. Synchronicity and all that sort of thing.
Back to that double star trail on the equator. I have a question about that. If you were on a globe, wouldn't you expect standing on the equator, all the stars would move past you just like they do right there in the middle? It would look like you're looking at the wall of a cylinder on a globe.
Yeah. Oh crap. Sorry.
Exactly. I put that in a video. It looked like a flipping cylinder just rolling over you in one bright, nice picture.
Yeah, all the stars. You should see the rotations.
You can't see two separate curved rotations if you're standing at the equator on a ball. How could you? They keep referring back to look that way or look that way. I said, no, I'm looking that way, seeing two at the same time. And how do you explain it if I'm looking from 37 degrees south towards the celestial equator and seeing two rotations? It's impossible on a ball Earth turning one direction.
That makes no sense whatsoever. But the source of the motion is also confusing, right? So that's what I'm trying to nail down an analysis. So we have a rotation and a counter rotation, and we have, say, a causal agent. So if it's not perspective, you're saying that the mirroring of an actual rotation one way in the north will itself reverse it in the south. So you don't need any other effects for that to happen.
Yeah. It is actually mirroring because of that curved outer southern field.
So the motion going in the other direction is part of the parabolic reflection.
Yeah. When you've got a flat horizontal plane at the center, it'll just swing down and go straight up and be brought back to you from the wall of the southern curving field. And rotate in an opposite direction. Yeah.
Okay.
If I had to spare 30,000, mate, I'd make the model.
Right. Yeah. Well, so then you have convergence and counterconvergence, right? The fact that everyone sees circumpolar stars, meaning the whole sky is condensed into a focal point that is an axis of rotation only optically. So before I was adopting mirrored parabolic reflected northern stars, you'd have to say, like, what causal agent is making it converge like that if they're actually not converged in the sky, right? But this fixes that because actually they are converged and you're looking right at them where they appear to be. Again, is the answer.
Yeah. the two fields coming in too, because you've got to imagine one's north, one's south pole coming into the capacitor plates, curve in like this, and that curving is driving the image of our sun around the tropical gap, because that's where the energy is being created. That's where you could say that's where the cables are connecting each time as it swings around, creating a spark of the sun, like this,
Toroidal tropics of creation.
Yeah, well, it's an exploded view of the central vortex of creation, the black hole of creation, dead center, is our exploded view in our realm, is the tropical gap, electric zone, or where the electromagnetic field is created.
So everything happens in the tropics. That's where the juice. That's where the luminaries live. Yep, that's the magic. That's the sun. That's the moon. That's the path. Shouldn't they be changing though? If the maximum is expanding bigger and the minimum is getting lower each oscillation, as it would if it's like toroidal breathing causing the path of the tropics, shouldn't they have like elongated and gotten bigger by now? Or smaller?
No. It's a cycle. It's just a continuous cycle over the year, 12 months.
It never increases its maximum?
The tropical gap doesn't move, and nor does the central vortex of creation. The ecliptic plane is always stationary in this, turning central to the center of the flat plane. It doesn't go anywhere. It's only its reflected image. It only flexes up and down.
So
it doesn't move left or right, doesn't move off its axis from the north. It's always there, just flexing up and down. And that's where all the images are. It's just it's the other hemisphere, the parabolic projection. That alters because it's coming in. So the sun will come in. So over our southern winter, the sun moves north. Doesn't swing around so much like it does on the extended southern summer. Our summer. The sun goes around further. You can see the whole more of the cardioid rotation over the summer. Mm-hmm. So it's pitched out.
Right.
And,
so the
and
sun.
Then you see.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out the other question I had, because before I understood, or it's like it was tough to work with an explanation that didn't use every aspect of the engine that I'm aware of, right? Because like if I could use Southern Star Trails as a perspective induced, if I can understand that it works without that, then you don't need a parabolic mirror that you may or may not be able to find, that may or may not be actively having the effect that you think. But when you actually understand it and you find that you need every piece that it's kind of reassuring that that's probably the way that it really works. Like, when you get a toy kit and you use every piece of the Lego and you're like, that's probably it. Or when you have like 30 pieces left over, you're like, no, it's probably fine. I definitely did it right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the way the magnetic field works, as it comes in from both ends, each pole. The stars are just images at night, projections, holographic projections at night, following that same central moving field.
Right. So the shape of the field would influence the stars.
Well, because it's all based on that same, all goes back to the golden ratio spiral that comes out of creation at the beginning. So it's that same circle reflecting out. I mean, you look at a toroidal field, the wave goes right out. But
yeah, let's do that. Let's look at a toroidal
field. In our earthly system, we have the gap. In a normal field, they don't show the gap because it hasn't got the electrical component. That electromagnetic induction. The sun is feeding back into the black hole, driving the S curve infinity symbol north to south.
It's a tough thing to explain without a visual, I find, especially for this one. A moving, vibrant, 3D toroidal image pulse that conversely has a flip point, that has force vectors that flip and move and converge and diverge and come back and forth. Let's just look at one so we can see what we're talking about, because I'm pretty sure the geometry is pretty standard. No matter the shape, they all end up forming the same force line. So there's a universal force at work. Let's find a good one.
You'd have to try and design it yourself, where the wave comes out all the way to the Tropic of Cancer, and you've got to show it split there, slight separation, and then the wave coming back in the other direction. Ken Wheeler's shown it, the image with his little toys. How it's a S curve, and then you lean it over on an angle and see it from another perspective and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Nobody really know what he's talking about unless you're a flat earther and you can connect it with this
Yeah.
optical gap.
And actually, if you're a flat earther, the only ones to talk about toroid, we get excited by toroidal things because we all inherently recognize the truth and that little structure, and we know the significance. But when Globers hear, they just go, haha, Globers love like toroidal stuff, word salad, nonsense. I don't know, toroidal pull, not like it. They get a kick out of it, but they don't see what that is. Like this motion right here is what you were describing with top and bottom, up and down, pulling it in, right? I mean, it's the only one I've ever seen, but to me, that looks like a realistic geometric motion.
Yeah, well, you have the yellow and the blue fields there.
Yep. So this is like the same field from 4 angles, though. I think we keep doing the same motion.
Yeah, it's not quite right though.
You don't think so?
It's not really showing the gap.
Well, top down, like, so if you look at the top down, the top left,
Top
the
down.
yeah,
top
so
down.
the
Yeah.
top left one shows the tropical gap as it would have to form in the same
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah, well,
right?
that's right there. Yeah. Mm.
So it's weird. It looks strange from the angle, from the side. You can't tell what it's doing, but it is coming down, sweeping in, inverting on itself, going back out, and coming back in. Almost always directly at the equator or right at the tropics. That can't be a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's only because I lined it up on the Gleason's map to put some thrusting thing, like just to get some imagery for it, and it always lines up with the tropics, and I never failed to notice that.
Yeah. But if you're just showing images like that, globies won't get the idea.
No, that's not for them. That's for me to see. Like, what the hell am I talking about? When you say this giant, moving, pulsing fucking field, like, what does it look like?
Yeah.
And somebody just made this up,
Yeah.
right? This is a geometric. It says like fun with toruses, but it's a somewhat standardized pattern because all the ones that I know are at various stages of this motion that we're watching right now.
Yeah.
But it's hard to talk about an ultimate force that everything is governed by without being able to see what it would possibly look like. If I'm supposed to predict the action and motion of this and see how that motion affects my world and my vision, but I have no idea how it looks, it's really, really tough, right?
It all comes back to magnetism, and it's all about the magnetic field.
Yes, it absolutely is.
The female is the magnetic. She does the magnetic cycle, and the male is electromagnetic. He needs the north and south pole and the energy created between the gap.
Wait, right. I thought the energy was only made between the gap.
Well, that's creating the sun. Yeah. The feminine aspect is in the magnetic field, and sun as an SUN is the same as SON.
You don't think that
this is created?
This would be the shape of Earth's magnetic field? You think there'd be something else? I always envisioned it around that toroidal shape, almost exactly.
If you look down the central vortex of creation, it's like that, yeah.
Right? You've always been good at imagining what it looks like from the top down. When you drew the vortex with a mouth, I stared at it for a while, like, what the hell am I? What is that? But then I'm like, oh no, it's just, oh no, that's the same thing. I think you just put it like going in.
Yeah.
Right,
You look in the center of the vortex, you see the Fibonacci or the golden ratio. That's only half the cycle.
Yeah.
Another one next to it, you've got yourself a cardioid.
Yeah. Right. That's funny because if you take the sun's path into the north and the south, but put them on the same path, that would be the same shape.
Yeah.
Where did I put that sun's path one? There we go.
And then the side elevation is just a big Superman S curve.
Yep.
Down the vortex.
So that's the same toroidal. It's a frozen image of the toroidal in one of the mid motions, and again, it lines up perfectly. It would create exactly the tropical gap where we see it. So then that's what I was thinking. Well, obviously the tropical gap must be a facet or subcreation of an aspect of the geometry of the toroid, because that's the shape we get every time, and that can't be a coincidence. So if one governs the other, and that's where we're at now, then I would assume that that's why we have the shape in the way it is, because it will always be that shape because of the nature of the field.
Yeah.
I think I just threw in some extra toroids here. There was a good while when I was just all about toroids, because we didn't quite sure what it was, but I was like, that shape is promising. In reality, like I said, the primer fields guy realized that atoms and all that shit doesn't exist, but the smallest bit of particles, or the bits of corpuscles, whatever you want to call them, are actually double torus field double torus field magnets that act exactly as a bar magnet field would around all the edges. So I thought that was interesting.
I don't know why people knock the atom. Let's throw away atomism. I think they're trying to guide you away from the truth. It's all about atomism, atom.
But
The
so
atom, the splitting of the atom, becoming dual.
yeah,
And then we as humans on the earth create the infinity splits, because every one of our meridians represents another split off wherever you are on the earth. It goes from singularity to our realm, which gets split into two, and then there's us scattered around it, slicing it all up. It's the
man
more
is a
and more.
fractal of the earth. Yep.
Yeah.
When you first said that, I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. But then later I understood all this, and I'm like, that was deep and profound. That was
Yeah.
aptly named. That's nice. Man is a fractal of the earth. None more so than in the south. So,
In science, fractal's not the right word. You get the globies jumping on. It doesn't mean, it's not what fractal means, but it's the appropriate word. A fraction of it, a fractal of it.
Like, I think that's a really good word. The drawing on the right here with the south and the little outward facing claw spike. What do you call that again?
Which one are you referring to?
When you're looking in the south and you're describing the field, how it curves in on itself and accelerates like westward or west south or whatever.
Curves around to the west. That's the toroidal field. That's the Bible calls the plowshare. At the end there, where you get the red dots, is the pomegranates, and the pruning hook going around the pomegranate.
So that's the golden ratio, ever expanding southern field. That so if you look at the toroid that we just watched, the motion, that drawing perfectly to me represents the motion that we saw as it expanded and contracted and reached out towards the side. So that when I first saw your things and I connected the expanding toroid visual to what you were drawing on the outside, I went, oh man, no, that makes sense to me. I get it. So then you also think that the south is ever expanding according to the field. It is bigger than the north, and it is, that tropic is bigger than the middle tropic, and everything out there expands as it goes out, as opposed to that's just a warping factor of the Gleason's map when you splay out a globe into a flat plane.
Yeah.
So in reality,
it's hard to get people.
Sorry,
Pretty hard for people to visualize that expansion, eh?
I just wanted to say something for Lindsay. I was looking over your work, and it's really nice. I was wanting to ask you a question. It basically has to do with if you've ever heard of there's this dual pole version of flat Earth. Right now, what I'm live streaming some graphics that I put together to share this idea. But it's basically I'm trying to take your model and your presentation of these ideas and display it and visualize it in a way in which I could basically represent the southern hemisphere in the same manner, including the east, like ease, compared to the north hemisphere, keeping in mind all of your points that you mentioned, your black hole in the center, the and beyond from there. So my question for you was, have you ever heard of it? If not, would you be interested in looking at my live stream real quick? and let me know
Dual
what you think
pole.
about it.
Dual pole. Dual
Yeah,
what?
it's,
Northern pole. I don't know what you mean.
I could explain it. By the way, I'm not gonna counter you or go against you or say anything you're doing or thinking is wrong. I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to do right now. Just trying to show this
That's all right.
idea, and if you think if it's interesting or it'll work or not.
You're gonna get him to concave his own idea for you. I
No,
mean,
no,
you
no,
can,
this
you
is
can-
not concave. This is all flat. No concavity. Are you interested in looking, Lindsay? Because it is an invitation.
Yeah.
If not, you
I don't
two
mind.
can continue.
I don't mind. Is that your image there? That globe thing?
Sorry.
you noticed.
What's your image?
Are you looking at my live stream?
I don't know. I can
It's
see
on-
an
it's
image
on
of a
Discord.
So you'd have
I
to
can
switch
see an
over
image
from
of
mine.
a little globe ball thing with 3 black dots. Is it?
It's like I'm streaming Paint. Am I streaming? Are you guys able to see?
I think he sees, man.
Yeah. So basically, I don't if you're able to see. So basically, I take the idea of your central rotation.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have your. Okay. So let me show you. The map would look like this. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm not looking at it, so how do I see it? How do I look at it? How do I find it?
Maybe.
Lindsay, go to your top right and hit the grid button.
Well, let's just do
Grid.
this.
Yeah, it's
Little
next to the
square
guy with the
grid.
plus sign. Yeah. Hit
Okay,
the
there we
grid
go.
button.
Okay.
So now you're looking at
Okay, who we
everybody. And then the top
Yeah.
left it says watch stream over the concave earth on the other one on the left side next to you.
Left
You have to
You gotta
side.
watch that stream.
Yeah. But our
You gotta
friend
watch
Am I
that
concave.
done?
stream. It says watch stream over the name top left, concave earth, position 2.
Cool.
It looks like
Position
another
2.
person talking, only it's actually a stream that he's got up.
Can you see it?
I can see this big screen with multi screens in it.
Right. So
Yeah.
if you hit the grid button, you can actually see yourself in square number 3, right? Up top.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm
next
in
to that,
3.
there's an orange live button in the window right next to you, and the little tile next to you. It says concave, and you just have to click watch stream. It's right in the middle
Okay.
of the tile next to you, to the
Okay.
left of you.
Concave earth. That's it there,
Yeah,
right?
there you go. So if you're watching that stream, now you're seeing him at concave earth 100%, right?
Thanks, Stone.
So away you go,
Okay.
man.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay.
So let me just explain to you what this is. This is
Yeah.
just again. This is all flat. This is all planar. Okay, just things are laid out a little bit differently. This would be, and I want to make this quick. Okay, this would be how the map would work. And the idea is this down here. Okay. And I know this shows like a curve here, but this is the only image I could find to like show the idea. But it basically would be your central. It would be this that you have here. Okay, it'll be overlaid directly over the center in a sense. And your diagram, how you drew here, you know, in the north, how you have this funnel going down in the north, and this is actually the northern part of your of this sphere here, which
All right, I'm gonna. Oops, sorry about that. All right, Toby and I are about to. We're gonna take a break here, and then we're going to do our live reading stuff. If you want to finish up on Shane or finish up this conversation with Shane's stream, you can find it here on Rumble.
south to for your
All right, we'll be back in a little bit to start our Yuri Galaev reading.